Alright guys, Hayzink here, welcome back to the channel for another Street Fighter Duel video. And in today's video we are going to be doing probably one of the most contentious things in the whole of gacha gaming, and that is a tier list. And this is specifically going to be talking about PvP, okay? And it's really going to be talking about the only true PvP in this game, okay? Which is Showdown, right? Now some people might be wondering what I mean by that. I will explain what I mean by that when we're building this tier list, okay? So you'll notice there's a lot of units on here, but there's also a lot of units missing from here. Basically, if they're not on this list, I just couldn't be bothered talking about them. There's no point in talking about them. It's just a complete waste of time because no one's ever going to use them, and there's no point in them being on here, okay? Now, I don't want this video to go on for ages, so I'm going to cut here and I'm going to fill out the B. I'm just going to put, they're more or less just there because, hey, if you've got them and maybe you find a use for them, I don't want to make you feel absolutely worthless. So I'm going to fill out this B tier, maybe some of the A tier, but really predominantly we're going to be focusing on the S, the double S and the triple S tier because, let's be honest, even in Showdown mode, you're only going to use, what, 12 units. I'm not counting supports on this. This is not taking into account support. It's only going to be looking at units who are appearing on the starting lineup, okay? So when I cut back, some of this should be a little bit fleshed out, okay? Okay, so as it transpires, it was harder to actually do than I thought. Very quickly, I probably should not have even had a B tier on here. I could have just removed it altogether. And really, Guile is down there, Trendy Guile. Mainly because he's really not going to do as much damage as the units in the A tier. I mean, I wouldn't really recommend these days using any of these units in PvP, but there could be some arguments said for Guile, normal Guile particularly, Dalsim. Technically, I suppose if you're really pushed for units, Fashion Blanca, maybe even Trendy Cammy, they can do a bit of damage for you, but like honestly, in realistic terms, these are units you're never really going to use in PvP anymore. Unfortunately, the way the meta is, you are very hard coded and very hard tied to facing specific teams and specific team comps, and for that you need to have specific things in your team builds. So I am going to attempt to fly through this as quickly as possible, doing it while recording. I'll spend more time talking about the units that are on the higher tiers and maybe a bit of time justifying units who are potentially on lower tiers, okay? So to make this really easy, we're just going to go straight off the bat with two units who probably don't need a lot of explanation as to why they're going in the top tier, but we've got Bison, new Bison, by virtue of the fact that he is pretty much a unit that can, depending on how you're set up, he can take care of V Vega teams pretty damn quickly. But that being said, V Vega still goes up here because he is a unit that can just absolutely mow through a lot of other teams. Now, he has not just that going for him, he's also an extremely fast unit, which kind of also really sets him apart from a lot of other things within the game. But the main thing that makes V Vega such a good unit is his ignoring of damage immunities. Now, obviously that doesn't happen with Bison because his damage immunity isn't quite damage immunity. It's more, well, it's not more, it is. It's like survive for a certain amount of time and do not drop below a certain amount of HP. That's not damage immunity. Although it is, it's really confusing, right? It really is. Now, there is a bit of a, I've got to just say, there is a bit of a controversy, or whatever. There's a bit of an issue with Bison. Some people will deny this blind, other people will say it's how it's supposed to be. There's a whole discussion on the Discord last night about it as well. He is definitely still not working quite as intended, okay? Because he can be stunned and then killed, right? That one happens. Whatever, right? I've also seen a video of him last night where true damage was killing him, and people are saying that true damage bypasses his immunity, which I don't really get because it shouldn't. Like, there isn't a reason for it. Someone else said, I think it was Flamewind, said that it does happen. It isn't noted anywhere that it happens, but it does happen. To me, then, that means it shouldn't happen. It's just my opinion. I mean, if true damage ignores damage immunities and things like that, then it should be noted somewhere, because then we know for a fact that's what it should be doing. So until it's like confirmed within the game that true damage does in fact 100% bypass all of these things like damage immunity and stuff like that, I'm going to treat it like it doesn't. Mainly because if it's not noted, in my opinion, it shouldn't be happening. And if it's supposed to be happening, then it should be added to the game under the description of what true damage actually does. Hopefully that makes sense to people. If they actually go in and amend that and make it say that, then that would probably quite fundamentally change a lot of things that's on lists like this, okay? But these first two units are no-brainers for me. They absolutely do go into that top tier. Now, before we really start talking about other DPS type units, there's another couple of easy gets that can go up onto that top list. I'm going to put up Gokin because he's like the only unit that does what he does, which is give you that level of survivability because he's got that revive. Now, obviously, that revive can be kind of ignored by units who do have that ability to ignore that, but not every unit has that, as we're going to talk about as we move down this list. But for the reason that he's kind of doing that and no one else can do that, then he is someone who 100% deserves his spot right up there at the top of this list without question, okay? So we've got 3 units at the top at the moment, and I'm going to start like filtering them into different spots. Well, that is after we do this unit. Now, you might notice he wasn't there 2 seconds ago, but he's there now. And that is going to be Honda. Honda can go up there as well. Honda's kind of crazy because Honda, not only will he give damage reduction to the enemy, take it down so that they take more damage, he just, like, he can one-man show it. Depending on the teams you face, if you kind of clutch out and you've taken care of specific units on their team, like, for example, if you're facing a V Vega team and your Honda manages to kill their V Vega, but the rest of your team dies, your Honda can then go on and win that entire match. So Honda absolutely deserves to be up there, no questions asked, okay? Now, this is where things are probably going to get a little bit contentious, okay? Now, I'm going to try and judge this based on ideal scenarios, okay? So Base Bison, although recently I have gone down on him a lot in the last few tier lists, it's been a while since I've done a tier list, and if we're going to talk about Bison specifically on what is kind of the best team for him at the moment, which is with the other Bison, I would need to put him up here, mainly because in partnership with the other Bison, he would deserve to be at the top spot on the list, okay? Now, where it gets a little bit controversial is, I'd say this guy, with this guy, definitely deserves to be here. But without this guy, I wouldn't put him up here, okay? I would maybe put him here. But I'm going to view it as we're talking about optimal here with this guy. So we're going to put him in the top tier, okay? Mainly because he pairs so well with standard new Bison, right? But again, that is on that one specific team comp, okay? I'm not talking about all team comps, I'm just talking about on that team comp, okay? Now, other units who can go up here, no-brainer. I know I said I was going to start doing the other tiers, right? But there is just a few no-brainers, okay? We're going to put up this guy because this guy's blocking ranged attacks basically makes him de facto requirement in the current meta if you're trying to build one of the counters to V Vega, okay? He is needed to be one of the counters for V Vega. So if you're talking about a unit that counters one of the most meta units for attack in the game, they need to go into the top tier, right? It's just how it goes. And the other unit that would fall into that category as well would be this one, right? She definitely goes up there because, again, especially in the current meta, she is a unit that is providing you something that not many other units in the game can like have a hard defense against. Mainly the 2 units that are sitting right next to each other are the only 2 that have that kind of hard defense of blocking ranged attacks. So for that reason, they do go into that top spot on the list, okay? Now, we're going to start filtering now, okay? We're not just going to immediately go to the very, very top all the time. So, DPS. We're going to talk about DPS units, okay? Essentially, there is two things that separate, well, one thing really, that separates a good DPS from a great DPS. In essence, what I'm saying is there's one thing that separates an SS unit from a triple S unit when it comes to DPSing, okay? And we're going to start off by talking about the units that I'm going to put into the double S category for the damage output for their DPS ability, okay? You might start to see a bit of a theme appearing here as we do this, but let's start tossing a good few units up here, and they're mainly going to be up here all for the same reason, okay? So I'm going to put up standard Cami. Now I'm working this on the basis that you're on auto anyway, so because you're on auto, her triggers do work, okay? Same with Jury, although Jury misses a little bit. Still, we'll forgive her for that just now. We'll put her up here. Other units I would put into this double S tier for DPSing. And again, I will explain my reasoning behind this in just a couple of moments, okay? I would say that I would probably venture putting units like Ibuki up here, okay? Ibuki can like one-shot a lot of characters. She's pretty solid when it comes to her damage output. I would also put probably Trendy Akuma up here. Again, are you going to use this unit? Maybe not, to be completely honest. You might not even ever use the unit. As well, we would put New Poison up here, okay? And again, I'm going to explain the rationale. Just let me put these units up here first. I would also probably put again, this is for DPS. Shredder. Some of you are going to be flipping out. I'll explain this in a minute. So for DPS, okay, for their damage output, these guys would go here. The reason they're in the double S tier and not the triple S tier, even though Shredder hits like an absolute truck, they are missing something, right? And they're missing something that separates the men from the boys when it comes to PvP, okay? So before I say what that is, I'm going to put a few units into the triple S because I can explain both of these things at the same time, okay? So we're going to put up Evil Ryu. We're going to put up Oni. We're going to put up Luke. We're going to put up Leonardo. Believe it or not, we're going to put up Action DiCaprio. And refer to my list that I wrote down earlier, make sure I never missed anyone. No, didn't miss anyone. Okay, so the astute among you may already know why these units are up here and the ones down below it are not. Simply put, those units all at some place within their kit have ignore damage immunity. Okay, they will kill. They will straight up, they will kill units, right? So DiCaprio does it on her C1. Leonardo does it when he's built stacks. He's a bit, because it can be hard to get his stacks to the point where you're actually getting that damage immunity. Luke does it once he has his stance changed, which you should get pretty quickly. Oni does it on his trigger, on his C3, and obviously Evil Ryu does it as well. These units kill, right? They kill. And in the current meta, you need that. You need units who can bypass these things, who can bypass revivals, damage immunity, and all the rest of it. These units down below all hit extremely hard, but they do not have that in their kit, okay? So take Shredder, for example. He hits very hard, but he's very squishy, okay? And part of the reason why V Vega, for example, is very good is he hits very hard, he is very squishy, but you generally don't have to worry about it because he'll have killed them before he needs to worry about taking hits, okay? Oni, while I don't think Oni gets as much love in PvP these days, he can still do it absolutely as well. He's quite squishy, but because he can kill, it doesn't matter as much, okay? Units down below fall into the category of probably being a little bit squishy, but they don't necessarily kill, because if you're facing against units that have, for example, your Bisons, Gokins for the support and stuff like that, you're going to make them pop faster, right? So Shredder on a team that's facing Bison, for talking sake, because he hits so hard, even if you go first and you've got him as an attacker on your lineup, you're just going to end up triggering Bison faster, and it's just going to kill your Shredder and the rest of your team, okay? Now, there could be an argument made for speed, okay? Speed is obviously a very, very important aspect of the game. Probably one of the most important aspects of the game. And if this was a speed tier list, okay, it's not. But if it was, I would put Shredder up here, right? But I think people are slightly overestimating Shredder's usage as a DPS. Now, again, I'm not saying he's not a good DPS. If you had him on a team with something like the Capri, let's say, the Capri does her ignore damage immunity on her C1. So if you get lucky and Shredder pops his C3, then he might have just brought the damage down to the point where if you've got her doing the C1 on the next attack, it might be enough to actually start popping people off and killing them. But the reason I said before we're going to talk about this based on the only real PvP in the game, which is Showdown, you can't manipulate Showdown, okay? You can't. HWA that's running right now, you can manipulate that. And what I mean by you can manipulate that is you attack someone, you see your team didn't work, and you then go and build a new team that will counter that team. You can't do that in Showdown. In Showdown, you've got to put out the best possible teams you can and hope that no matter what you come up against, that team's going to be strong enough to keep going and keep surviving, okay? So that's the reason why I'm basing a lot of this on Showdown. Simply put, because Showdown is kind of a different benchmark. It's a different standard bearer. You need to have better teams, okay? And those teams need to be able to come up and win against whatever's thrown at them, okay? So I am going to put Shredder in the double S tier. I'm not going to put him into the triple S tier because if we're purely using Shredder as a speed battery, which I'll be honest, that's how I'm using him. If we're purely using him as a speed battery, then yes, I'd put him into the triple S tier, okay? But I'm not viewing it that way. I'm viewing it as his total utility, right? Now, okay, some people might say that flies in the face of putting Chun-Li and putting E-Honda up top. I disagree because E-Honda, you can actually use him and you can make him interrupt, which can help you. You can use your Chun-Li and you can make your Chun-Li heal, buff, and all the rest of it. So they're not just up there for the fact that they can block ranged attacks from V-Vega, okay? But they are up there because mainly they can block ranged attacks from V-Vega. They just also have that other string in their bow. If Shredder had ignore damage immunity, without shadow of a doubt, he would be in that top tier. If they bring out a support unit that if you put it on a unit, it will give them ignore damage, 100% he would get moved up. But because I don't want to overhype the unit, because I really don't, I feel like too many people right now are overhyping him. I'm still seeing people pushing this guy as someone who can do more damage than V-Vega. You can't not factor in the fact that he's got ignore damage immunity. For PvP, you need to factor that in. Not factoring in the fact that units like Vega have ignored damage immunity is massively underselling them. And I say that because a unit like Shredder, depending on who you're facing, let's just say you've got the ability for Shredder to not die, right? To not die. If he's attacking a unit like, for example, Standard Bison, I don't know, Sagat, Goken, right? Units like that, he can hit them. They don't die, hit them again, they don't die, they revive, they get their shields and all the rest of it, and it can take him maybe to the third time of doing his attack before they die or he's dead beforehand. Even though he's going to put out a lot of damage in that amount of time, someone like Oni, for talking sake, he can go out, he can hit them for less damage overall, but they die at the end of it because he has the ability to ignore that damage immunity. That's a huge deal. I mean, it's huge, and it's really not smart to undersell that, because when you're looking at it from a PvP point of view, that's massively important. Bossing, it's not, okay? If we're talking bossing, it's not. But we're not talking bossing, we're talking PvP. And for PvP, him not having that damage immunity, if we're looking at him from a DPS point of view, which he is, okay, he is not a speed battery, he is not sold as a speed battery, he's sold as a DPS, essentially, right? Although, arguably, most people probably bought him because A, he's Shredder, and B, his speed, right? But because of not doing damage immunity, I'm putting him into double S. That's it. If you've got damage immunity ignoring, you're getting the top tier. That's it. You're going top tier because in the current meta of the game, it's probably one of the most important aspects. Hands down, no one's going to change my mind on that, right? So, do any other turtles go in that top tier? Well, yes, this one, right? You can go in that top tier, and again, much like this guy, because he functions so well with that Bison team, he goes in that top tier, okay? Now, unfortunately, that does leave one turtle. And honestly, the full Turtles team is not good for PvP. It's not, right? These units, they're all getting looked at being on a team that's not the Turtles team, okay? That is on another team. You know what, actually, I would maybe even put him here. I maybe would, actually, because, you know what? Yeah, I would. Maybe seems a bit mean, but I'm going to put him in double S. But anyway, this guy, on a full Turtles team, he's an essential unit, right? But I don't think the full Turtles team is actually very good for PvP. I don't. So we can't really put 3 Turtles on the list and not put this guy on the list. I would put him here. And that's just because, honestly, out with the Turtles team, I don't think Raphael's that great. He can have function, but he's not that great, and I don't really see you using him in PvP unless you were running the full Turtles team, and you'll probably quickly find that the full Turtles team, unless you're facing someone who's not very good and doesn't have a lot of units, it's probably not going to serve you all that well, unfortunately. So for that reason, we are going to put Raphael way down there, right? Now, there's some units who I think deserve to be on this list. They're not really a function of PvP much anymore. You don't really see them all that often. You do sometimes, depending on who you're playing. But again, they're not deal breakers anymore. So I would put Elena here because, yeah, you can still use her. I'd say she's more useful than units in the A tier. But she's not what she once was. You've got Dan, who, again, because he can do things like bringing units out from the support, people tend to put their weaker units in support. You might be able to kill that unit a bit faster. Do you see Dan getting used all that often? No. But that's not to say he can't be used. So we're not going to discount him, and I'll put him into the S tier because, again, I think he does more than the units in the A tier. So he doesn't deserve to go down to the A tier, right? You've also got other units that I think can quite happily slot in on the S tier, mainly for the same kind of reasons. That's going to be shielding, healing, a bit of survivability type units. Okay, so we're going to put him into there. Buffing wise, I would probably put her in here because, again, you're probably not going to use her that often. Yes, she could be used in a pinch, but really, you're probably better served trying to find a way to just get the match over faster than you're going to really see the benefits from her. I mean, she could go up to double S. I mean, if somebody wanted to argue with me about that, I would probably back down at my stance and put her up to double S. But again, it's just something you don't really ever see happening anymore, people using that unit. Units, again, who I think would fall into the S tier now, rather than going up to double S. Controversial, probably. Maybe I'm being a little bit mean here. I really want to put him here, but I'm thinking here. I mean, I just feel like there's so many better options these days than running Ken. I'm going to put Ken in the S tier. I know, really controversial take. People probably won't like me doing that, but it is what it is. I would put her here for healing. Same thing. I mean, the reason she's here is if you've got her built, she will give you boosts to like your crit damage and stuff, which, again, is a string in the bow that I don't think should be overlooked. I think probably arguably the best healer in the game is probably this unit here. When it comes to other units who I think, I wouldn't say are bad, but I wouldn't rush to run them, would probably be you. Quite happy putting you there. Makoto, some people love Makoto. I'm yet to be convinced by Makoto. I don't think she's bad by any stretch. I mean, if she's in the S tier, I'm clearly not saying that she's bad, but I would put her around about here. Virgil, Nero, I mean, Nero's not the worst unit in the game. Again, I don't think he's necessarily great. It's totally hard to decide whether you put him here or whether you put him here. I mean, if the benchmark for good tanks is like these guys here, then I think he goes here. Honestly, I do. I think he goes here. I just don't think that... I mean, he's half decent. He can be good. Would you run him over a lot of these other units? No, I don't think you would, personally. I mean, I would actually probably, if you've got him built, I would probably put Wrestler Hugo here above him. I would say that Wrestler Hugo is a better tank than Nero. Again, different strokes for different folks. You don't need to agree. That's fine. We're not here for everyone to be all smiles and flowers and happiness and say that I'm right. I'm allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to be wrong. We're all allowed to be wrong. But that's the thing about opinions. We've all got them. Some of them stink. Is that assholes? I don't remember. It's one or the other. Anyway, going back to easier to discuss units, probably one of the best units in the game would be Trendy Ryu. Would I go as far now to say he's the best? Well, I mean, obviously, if he's one of the best units in the game, Hayzink, then clearly he's the best divination unit, because there's not that many great divination units. I would say that Trendy Ryu probably is the best divination unit in the game. Yeah, I probably would. Poison's really good as well. But again, because her function is more DPS role, if she had that ignore damage immunity, I'd put her up there, no bother at all. Ryu's up there because he does, like, I mean, he's not even a tank, right? But he takes an absolute pounding and he gives an absolute pounding. So he puts out so much damage and he takes so much damage. That to me just pushes him up to the top tier, hands down, no problem at all. One unit who I've probably been a little bit mean to in the past, and it's mainly because of how everything played out with her when she came out, is this unit here. This one is difficult because if you've got a really solid team where you can put out a really powerful like C2 and super, then she actually can do pretty well for you, right? I'm leaning more towards wanting to put her here, which is an upgrade considering where I had her on my overall tier list, right? There could be an argument for her to go here. So again, your mileage may vary a little bit here, but I am leaning a bit more to putting her here, right? Because I think she works best on a team where you're in control, right? Because of the way her overdrive and stuff like that works, if you're playing manual, you can get more damage out of her. But if the computer's doing it for you, you're not really maximising her usage. So for PvP, especially when you're not in control, I think I need to put her here. By virtue of that, because they're actually not all that different, really, I would put her here as well. Again, they're actually not all that different. She doesn't give you an extra turn or anything like that, but she's got the same kind of mechanic with charge. And overdrive, it's not exactly the same, but it's not too dissimilar. Essentially, when she expends her charge, that's it. Next time you do a super combo, that combo dies and you need to wait until it comes back for the next one. So there's an element of it that's a bit the same, but not quite. Again, just talking about like damage throughput, so just the amount of damage that units actually put out. There's a few more that need to go into the double S tier. So like, probably would start off talking about, I want to say, Fireworks Sakura. She can hit hard. She can hit hard. Again, not having ignore damage immunity, I think, again, kind of reduces her usefulness a bit. And again, she's a unit you're not going to see that often in PvP. See, to be completely honest with you, you're predominantly going to see the top line of units in PvP. Some of the second line. Out with that, you're not that often going to see the rest of them, okay? And that's mainly because, unfortunately, this game is so meta-driven that only certain things are going to work, and it does ultimately really affect the placement of units. But I would say SS tier, she can definitely hit hard. I think you would need to supplement her with another unit who can ignore damage immunity. I mean, I don't really think there's anyone apart from Luke that can do that on his C2. Because of the way Luke works, his C2 becomes a C2 that can essentially ignore damage immunity. So if you've got units who are hitting hard on their C3s or their supers and stuff like that, it can help you to have a unit that's maybe on its C2 rather than on its C3, hitting units to the point where they're dying. So I'd say Secure is still good. If they brought out this fabled support unit who would add the ability to ignore damage immunity, then so many of these units would just get bumped right up to the top, with the caveat you need to use this other unit as a support. Because they function fairly similar, I'd probably put her here as well. I mean, honestly, they're two cheeks of the same arse. They're not that different as units. They're very similar in function, so we'll put them there. This guy, see, this is probably where I would get a little bit of a controversy of people. They're going to get annoyed at me, but I would actually put him here, and people are going to be like, what? Why are you going to put him up there, but you're not going to put Shredder up there? Well, let me explain. While he's not the fastest unit in the game, he is an extremely fast unit in the game who is going to be very solid for you there. But his C2 is phenomenal. I mean, if you are lucky enough with your timing and when the game plays out, I cannot count the amount of times that I've actually seen other people losing because Beast Zangief's there. Beast Zangief hits everyone with the C2, completely kills your combo, done. It's over, game over, you're cooked. It doesn't matter if you went first, if they happen to survive the first round of hits and then Zangief comes in and he absolutely stuns the rest of your team. I just think that in itself cannot be overlooked. Now, bear in mind, Zangief's not there to kill people. Zangief's there to essentially allow your team to survive and then go on and do the killing, which is why I'm kind of essentially grading him differently from I'm grading Shredder, because they don't perform the same function, okay? Some people would say, well, speed, yeah, speed, but it's more than just speed. I think he's got more going for him in a PvP aspect, okay? Now, if we're talking about just speed, you get Vega. Now, after everything I've said, I'm not going to judge it on just speed. I'm not. So I'm going to put him here. Because Vega is just speed, right? But the speed's enough to not put him down to A tier or B tier, right? If you're talking about this purely on a speed basis, then yes, he goes higher. Yes, Shredder goes higher. But I'm not, right? I'm talking about overall. I'm going to put him in the S tier because I think as a unit, ultimately, he's not doing that much, right? Now, that being said, I actually would put Ibuki here if she's running on the Bison team. And it's not just speed, okay? It's not. Ibuki has also got a bit of, I want to say, support going on. Like, I don't mean quite support, but if I go and I'll talk about Ibuki specifically, right? I think it's on her cars. Where is it? Not on her cars, on her fighting spirit. So for every 6 enemies that bouncy swing ring hits, refill the super combo gauge by 250. Okay, so you're getting a boost to your super combo, and it also resets our current speed boost, which means you're gaining combo faster. I think that's how it works. You kind of see it jumping up quicker. There's something else in her kit as well where I'm positive she also boosts your team's crit damage. Yeah, her combo 2. For every target hit, increases all teammates' crit rate by 10% for 5 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. That is a big deal, right? She's boosting your team's crit rate. So she's not just speed, right? She's not just speed, despite what people might say. She's not just speed. If you run her with Bison, if you run her against Bison, if you run her against a Shredder team, she's going to cause you to outspeed them as well, okay? And like I say, if she's doing hits with her C2, which is a trigger, she's increasing the crit rate of your team, which means ultimately you're likely to do more damage, okay? Now, because I've done it to Vega, I need to do it to Yun. It is just speed with Yun, so I'm putting him in the S tier. Guys, please realise, S tier is good, right? S tier is good. Okay, now, this one is a bit... Here. He's going to go here. And he is going to go here. Because Virgil, now, I don't know what it is. he doesn't hit that hard anymore. God knows why, right? I don't know why. He doesn't, right? You look at a lot of these other units, and Akuma's going to hit harder than him. Shredder will hit harder than him. If you factor in the fact that they're triggering, okay, your Kamis, your baddest Juries, they're going to hit harder than him, right? Because they've got triggers in their kit. You need to take the overall total of damage they're doing by the end of the run. When they done the buffs, before they done the buffs, I would have put Dante down. Virgil would probably have still been in the same spot. Now, if we talk about assists, which I'll probably do another list for, Virgil's top, right? Top. But we're not talking about assists, we're talking about in your starting lineup, right? So, enough said about that. I'm not going to harp on about it anymore. This guy, he's not actually that good. Really, he's not. He's really not that good. Ultimately, he's not, right? Because yeah, he's a trigger unit, but he's a trigger unit you need to use, right? He's not a trigger unit in the sense of like Baddest Jury, who if you don't use a super, you're still going to get her full trigger effects, right? Realistically, in a PvP battle, if you want to even see this guy popping his powerful trigger, you're going to have to use him. You're going to have to put him as your starting combo, right? Or else you're probably going to be dead before he gets a chance to actually trigger. So I'm not going to put him in the SS tier, I'm going to put him in the S tier because, again, he's not a trigger unit in the sense of the other trigger units where he's just going to trigger anyway. Do you know what? See, for that exact reason, I'm going to put him up because he is a trigger unit that's going to trigger whether you're using them or not. So yeah, I'm going to put him up, right? This guy, he's a bossing unit. He's a bossing unit. I'm going to put him in the S tier. He's a bossing unit. That's all I'm going to say about it, right? Akuma, single target these days in PvPs. Not going to cut it as much. Although I did put a Buki up there. A Buki will one-shot people. Akuma won't really one-shot people, so I'm going to put Akuma into the S tier. Other Ibuki, she's alright. I built her. I must say I'm pretty underwhelmed by her. I don't think she's fantastic. I'm going to put her into the S tier. It could be an argument for putting her into SS. I'd probably disagree with you, but hey. This guy, do you know what? I'd probably put both Ables. Yeah, I'd probably put both Ables up here. I've just realised that I don't have a picture of the other Able here. Now I do. Yeah, both Ables are quite happily going to the double S tier. Yeah, both Ables will go into the double S tier. I just think that that's a bit of a no-brainer. These last two units, I'm deliberately leaving Zangief to last, and I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, Sagat I'll put into the S tier. He's not a double S unit, he's not. Right, okay, this one's going to probably be a little bit controversial, but please allow me to explain. Zangief is the only unit in the game that can ignore or disable passives, okay? That in itself you think would make Zangief go either here or here, right? But I'm going to put Zangief here. The reason I'm going to put Zangief here is because anyone who knows how to build teams, so the people that you're probably going to be trying to work out, how do I beat this person, okay? They're not going to put their unit, like their Bisons, etc., into a position where they are vulnerable to Zangief, okay? They're not going to put them out in front. Because if they put them out in front, they are literally dangling a carrot in front of Zangief, and he's just going to disable them, okay? So people don't do that. People will put out a team where their Bison units will be behind a tank. They will put out teams that have someone in front of the key unit that will take the hit from someone like Zangief. And for that reason, if you're running Zangief, you've got to get extremely lucky, because remember, you cannot control Showdown. In manual PvP, you could probably work your timings to make Zangief disable the likes of your Bison, as in you've held off attacking, you've watched the HWA, you've done it a couple of times, you know that on 34 seconds, or sorry, let's just say 84 seconds, that your Bison's going to be out in front. 74 seconds, because you're not able to do it in 84 seconds. Your Bison's going to be out in front, so if you time your attack to start on the 78 seconds, your C2 will be available just as Bison's standing out front. You could hit him, disable him, blah, blah, blah. So you could, in manual PvP, you could totally use this guy and take advantage of the fact that you can see where units are going to be at certain points, and you could disable the likes of Bison's passive. You can't do that in Showdown. So if Zangief just so happened to disable someone, it's pure luck, right? Because you've not been able to control that. It's just happened and you've got lucky, right? So that's why I'm going to put him in the S tier. So there should be something that you should note here. The difference between the SS tier, the S tier, and the SSS tier, the SS tier, and the S tier, right? SSS, look at the units. All of these units, somewhere within their kit, have the ability to win you the fight. They've got the ability to win you the fight. SS tier, through attrition, depending on who you're fighting, they could win you the fight, but if they're coming up against like teams who have proper meta behind them, so the likes of your V-Vegas, your Bisons, stuff like that, even look, they're probably not going to win you the fight, okay? Some of them might help you survive longer in the fight, some of them might provide a good bit of a supporting damage, maybe as a sub-DPS kind of thing, because we're viewing our top-line killers as your main DPS because they have that function. So that's why they're still good and at a good high tier, just not the top tier. Your S tier units, to me, they're there. Like, I don't really know how else to describe it. Some of them probably have more value than others because of things like speed, right? But ultimately, overall, I wouldn't push them up because apart from the speed element, which again, I'm not wanting to put too much weight behind, although you could argue with me that it's probably the most important aspect. So should Yun, Vega go higher? I guess maybe, but then you would need to have units just clogging up the SSS tier because they've got speed. Because I mean, if we're viewing it on that, yes, Samurabuki, yes, Shredder, yes, Vega, yes, Yang should be on the top tier, right? But one-trick ponies, no, I don't like doing that. I feel they need to offer a bit more. S tier, like I say, they're there. I guess if you had to use them in a pinch, you could, but you'll probably not see them all being used that often anymore. Maybe Elena, maybe some street poison, trendy poison, prostitute poison. I don't know what she's called, right? A tier, they're there because I had the pictures sitting on the list and I had to put them somewhere. And B tier, honestly, shouldn't have a B tier. This B tier is redundant. Just, I already had the image loaded up and it would look stupid if I just had a tier with nothing on it. And to be fair, I would probably say Guile can quite happily sit down there. Don't really have a problem putting Guile down there. I don't think I'm doing him that dirty by putting him down there. I just think the units above him have maybe got a little bit more AoE going on in their kit. Although, to be honest, you know what? We'll put Trendy Cammy down there. Because her AoE is more of a trigger. It doesn't happen all the time. You can't rely on it. So, yeah, we'll throw her down there. But these other units have got like quite a strong AoE attack. So, for that reason, they can go there. And this guy, he's got an AoE attack. He's great if you're putting him on a Turtles team. You're not putting him on a Turtles team. Why would you even run him? But that's it. Probably, yeah, this one might be the one that people disagree with the most. But again, different strokes for different folks. You don't have to agree. If you don't agree, tell me why. Don't just say, oh, this sucks, this unit should be on this tier, or oh, that sucks, this unit should be on that tier. And people who come at me thinking that I've heavily undervalued Shredder for his DPS ability, no, I've not. Because he's in the double S tier, which means he is an extremely strong DPS. The thing that's stopping him going higher is the fact that he does not ignore damage immunity, which again, I think far too many people are overlooking and they are highly overselling the unit. Speed is a different story, but I'm not basing the whole entire tier list on speed. And it is what it is. Anyway, my eyes look fucked. What is going on with my eyes? I've been Hayzink. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.